teaching and technology workshop. We're really fortunate to have Elliott Campbell come and talk about DimDim. He's a assistant professor in the School of Engineering, and the reason why he came to start using this is because he wants to reduce his his carbon footprint by limiting how far and how much he has to travel. And so he found this tool to be, I think, one of the best ways to help him do that. And along the way, he also found a lot of great benefits and uses for his teaching as well. So today he's going to hopefully demonstrate what the tool's about and kind of show you some of the features, and at the end he'll have some time to answer any questions or anything you want to talk about. So thank you for coming, Elliott.
All right. Well, I'm excited to be here. We have a small group, so that's great. We can discuss things, and I guess we're recording it, so for all the people that are tuning in later, I hope this benefits you, and you can email me or call me or Skype me anytime. So yeah, I just, like Mike was saying, I got really interested in this stuff because I was doing a lot of traveling to meetings as a graduate student, but my research is on the CO2 emissions and climate change, and most everything else I did in my life, I tried to minimize my carbon emissions, and then I found there was this massive source of CO2 coming from my pseudo-professional travel as a graduate student. So I started looking into the different types of collaboration tools that get beyond a conference call, and some of these online meeting tools seem worth checking out. And in fact, the new developments in these tools is part of the reason I decided to come to Merced. I actually live in Santa Cruz, California, but I thought that with applying these tools, I could minimize the amount of travel I would have to do and be present and collaborating with my colleagues here through these tools. So I just started here in July. I've really taken a wide look at a lot of tools from kind of published reviews, which I don't find particularly useful. And then I decided to dive into one, which is called DimDim, and try it out. And I think after a semester and a half, I know a lot about the strengths and weaknesses of this tool that really aren't published online. It's hard to find out about kind of all the dimensions of these things. But to get started, I just wanted to show you this plot from a recent article in Science, I think last month, about the prevalence of online tools in higher education in the United States. And the bars here signify the level of penetration. So 10% means that, say for the very top bar for engineering and universities that have over 15,000 students, that's that purple bar on the very top. It looks like only about 4 or 5% of the classes of the universities with an engineering program have used online tools. But you can see that in other types of departments, these higher education programs have been more eager to embrace these tools. So maybe my work to bring this into engineering will help change these things a bit. But overall, you can see that these things are definitely out there. This is not some fringe element in higher education. And so it's an exciting time to be learning how to use these, and as they're getting better and better. To give you a roadmap of the areas that I'll go over, I just want to talk a bit about background. Why would you want to use one of these tools? Then I'll tell you specifically about DimDim and some of its features, and give you a tour of how this works. And then I'll talk about my initial results from my semester and a half of trying this out. And I hope that by the end of this talk that you would actually be able to go out and use DimDim for, say, a meeting with your collaborators in New York City, or maybe for a class meeting if that's something you're interested in. So why teach online? I think there's a lot of great reasons that I've listed up here, but certainly environmental reasons are topping the list these days. and they were really featured in this science article that I just showed you the plot from. There's no doubt that this is a great opportunity to increase the economic efficiency of our institutions. And I think one of the cost to produce buildings and to keep them cooled and heated and lit is an enormous cost, and if we can figure out how to most efficiently use our physical spaces by having a mixture of these online tools and these more conventional face-to-face meetings, then I think we can really improve the economy of our higher education. Providing access for remote community is definitely important, especially in the Central Valley, where part of our mission statement here is not only to be a sustainable campus, but to be able to provide education to people that might be limited in how much they can travel and leave the home, especially in this wide, large community that we're trying to support here. It's a bridge to open access education because a lot of these electronic meetings are easily recorded and then reused in the future. So there's examples at MIT and Stanford and Johns Hopkins and other universities where they're basically taking these online classroom experiences and making them open to the general public. Educational outcomes are, I can't really say at this point, at least from the literature, whether they're improved or hindered by using online tools in comparison with the existing kind of face-to-face type of teaching. But most of the literature seems to say that there's mixed results. So I think that's really promising for an approach that's just getting off the ground. If at this point the results seem to be mixed, it seems to indicate to me that there's huge potential for this to improve our educational outcomes. Training for the modern workplace, especially with the economic and environmental constraints of the future, this is going to become a really important tool. I've had some of my students telling me that that some of the businesses that they've been contacting about getting jobs actually are using the same tool that we're using in the classroom, and certainly there's others as well. Another really exciting reason to teach with these online tools is you can bring in some really high-powered collaborators for your teaching. So last semester I taught, I led a service learning project through the engineering service learning program, and we were able. Our project was on microfinance, and we were able to bring in the leading expert on the specific area of microfinance from Cornell, who never would have flown here and taken all that time to do that, but he did spend 2 hours with my students giving a presentation followed up by a discussion, and this was just a group of 10 students. So it's, I think, another example is this semester I'm teaching an engineering design class, and I have it's a wastewater design class, and I have a wastewater engineer from CH2M Hill headquarters in Denver who's participating in designing, teaching, and evaluating the students, and we're doing that through DimDim. Again, so this is something that wouldn't happen without having an online option. And archiving course content is also something that's maybe a bonus. Why I do this at Merced, I guess I've kind of talked about this already, but access for the Valley, sustainability vision being a huge part of our campus's identity. And one pretty cool thing is that the library's PCs, I just recently learned, are tablets, the laptops that they lend out. And these aren't necessary and are actually rarely used in online teaching, but in the type of online teaching I'm going to show you about today, kind of the future of online teaching, the tablet could be a really powerful tool. And we just happen to have a bunch of them available to the students. So, how to teach online. There's two approaches to teaching online. There's probably many approaches, but I'm going to categorize online teaching into two approaches, asynchronous and synchronous. So this slide gives an outline of asynchronous, which is basically the most prevalent form of online teaching, and asynchronous just means there's not a real-time meeting typically. Most of the class activities involve things where you might be doing your work in the class at different times from other people. So one example of this is using a discussion board where you're back and forth with other students or with a faculty member are done at different times. You post your comment, someone posts another comment, and so on. This is a pretty simple approach. You need probably a computer with a broadband connection, but maybe not a super high-speed connection because these things aren't taking up a lot of your don't require a lot of broadband width. The advantages here is that I think it gives you time to think. I took not an online class, but when I was an undergrad, I took a class that was recorded. I couldn't make it to the class time, so I went to the engineering library and pulled out the videotapes and popped them in. And it was one of the few classes that I didn't sleep through as an undergraduate. And the reason I think I fell asleep most often was because I would fall behind in what the professor was talking about. They'd be solving some problem, and then I'd say, oh, okay, that's kind of like this. And by then it was too late. They were already off to the next thing, and I was still trying to think about that thing. With the VCR, I could pause it, I could think about it, I could work the problem out, I could look up in my notes or in my text. So for me, time to think was a huge advantage for that type of, this asynchronous type of stuff. Flexible schedules, I could take that class. I had a class conflict, so if you need flexibility, that helps. This certainly works for motivated and independent students. It would work for shy students if you're not motivated or independent. If you need a coach in there kind of grabbing you and shaking you or whatever, that this isn't maybe going to be the thing for you, for that type of student. And the disadvantages, or maybe the real-time interactions here, would be limited to some kind of office hours. It might be a chat or a phone call or a face-to-face thing. And project work with your other students, getting together on problem sets, things like that. Definitely less effective for non-motivated students. So synchronous approach, this is kind of like what we're doing right now, except all online. You'd be hearing my voice through your computer, or we'd be chatting. You'd be seeing me maybe on a video screen. So that would be a synchronous approach, and this isn't very common. This isn't done very often. So here, the components might be an AV meeting room. So if you've ever used Skype to have a video conversation with someone, that could be an example of an audio-visual meeting room. Whiteboards, basically, where you can write on the screen and the teacher and other students can write on the screen. That's kind of where the tablets come in handy, because at least for writing equations, it's much easier to do it freehand than with the keyboard at this point. If you don't have a tablet, though, and most people don't, you can go to the library at UC Merced, which is fantastic, or you can buy a relatively inexpensive peripheral tablet that works really well with Windows. Probably does. And I haven't actually used it that much, which is one thing I'll get back to later. So the advantages, real-time interaction is definitely a big motivator. I think it's even kind of fun for students to see in real time their ideas published across the internet, It's kind of cool. I guess asynchronous, that's cool too. Your ideas get published in some space that's larger than this, something that just disappears after a few minutes. The scheduling's established, that can help motivate students. It's less flexible. Disadvantage there is not flexible. If you have scheduling context, it doesn't give you time to think that I personally found valuable. Here's a couple references that you might check out. The first is the science paper that I mentioned that is pretty thorough and gives a nice overview of where online teaching is being used in higher education, where it's not, and what is attractive about